What's something people don't realize until they get their first corporate role?
That everyone's faking it till they make it. That's probably not the appropriate answer, but honestly, especially when you're a student, you're in high school and college, everyone thinks about people who are in corporate America as having everything together. And that's really the furthest from the truth. In fact, people years into their career are still trying to very much figure it out. So really that everyone's faking it till they make it.
So today we have my sister-in-law, Miss Leilani Khan, with us here today. I genuinely admire her work ethics, her perspective, and the way she carries herself. So today we've asked her to join us here today. She's an executive director within the supply chain industry. So I'm going to let her give an introduction of herself first.
Hi, as Lena said, my name is Leilani Khan. I work for Estee Lauder Companies. I've been working for about 13 years. I graduated from Rutgers Business Schools, got an MS in supply chain management. From there, I joined Colgate-Palmolive, and then I've been at Estee Lauder for just about 10 years, with my most recent stint at MAC Cosmetics since last July. Currently, I'm our executive director of brand value chain, so I basically oversee all of our new product launches.
Amazing. So we're just going to go ahead and dive right into some of the questions that we have for you today.
So thank you, Alina, so much for getting this started. And thank you, Lani, for being with us. And one of the questions that I have for you is, do you feel special pressure being a female and being an immigrant in this job that you are doing now?
I don't know if I do, but I think a lot of people do is the honest answer. Growing the school district that I grew up in was mostly white. So I was probably one of 3 South Asian brown kids growing up. And so I think there was an innate pressure that I probably put on myself growing up, but I can't say that it was necessarily external. My parents didn't really pressure me. They always knew that I worked really hard. I was kind of a nerd in high school, so they didn't need to pressure me. As I got into corporate, again, I was typically the only South Asian Desi girl in almost every room that I was in. So it's not that there was external pressure, but I think inherently I put pressure on myself to prove it to my people and to my family and to my culture that I could do it.
Yeah, another question that I would like to ask you is that did anything from your family that you learned over the years help you in this job that you have been doing? Not particularly this role, but over the years in the corporate world?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think my family's, the sole reason I am where I am today. And the biggest thing I would say is probably hard work and ethic. I think from being a really little kid, from the time I was in grade school, it was always ingrained within us that we had to work hard, that there was no other option. And so while that's different than pressure, there was always an underlying baseline of I have to do well and I have to succeed and I have to make my parents proud. And again, it didn't come from a place of pride. It was more so just like you have to put your head down and do the hard work and show up for yourself, right? So I think I carried that throughout my entire career. And, no one gets to where they are just by luck. It really, truly is hard work. And I think coming from an immigrant family, you are taught that you have to work hard. So that I definitely carried with myself throughout my entire grade school, throughout more senior level of schooling, into college, and then into my career, for sure.
Yeah, touching upon that, the things that you learn from the family, I think it's, as you said, it's not very uncommon for immigrants, particularly from the South Asian region, where parents put a lot of emphasis on education, and there are valid reasons for that. I'm not saying that, other parents don't put emphasis, but because you have to establish yourself, the parents had to establish themselves in the new country. The parents worked it more that an education is very important. So with that could come some pressure and stuff like that, as you are saying. So of course it varies from family to family, from individuals to individuals. And before I ask my second question or next question, I'll let you take on.
Yeah, perfect. So just diving a little bit more into like the corporate side of things, what's the fastest way to grow professionally?
I think honestly, it's to start thinking about your profession sooner, right? Like I know, especially in the schooling system here in America, you are taught, it's always about like, what's the next internship and what am I doing as my co-op and what am I doing as my first profession post-grad. So it really is important to start thinking about those things at a younger age, even though you're still in school and, very much in a different mental mindset. Because as you carry that into your profession, I think it enables you to kind of have one foot forward, if that makes sense. And people who are always thinking about their careers, it really shows, right? Because you kind of take that ownership into your own hands. There's not going to be a boss who helps you get to where you need to go to. That's the reality. You have to take your career into your own hands. You have to be the number one, you have to fight for yourself, right? No matter what space you're in, no matter what you look like, no matter how old you are. And so the more you think about it, the more you teach yourself that you have to take ownership of your career, the more you can really take it into your hands and see where that takes you.
That actually brings me into my next question, right? So now that you're running a team and everything, what would you say like would make like an employee actually stand out at the firm?
Yeah, I think it's employees who think about how they can add value and create change. I think especially in today's culture, it's really easy to come with the perfect resume, with the perfect GPA from the Ivy League college. And it's really easy to have that cookie cutter candidate, which I know makes it a lot harder, but I'm also just speaking from experience. What really differentiates candidates in their career at every point is people who are really able to come and move and shake, right? And like change things and influence people. And at my age, I think one of the hardest things for me was learning how to not just like horizontal management, but like leading up and managing people who are much more senior, sometimes decades than me, learning how to manage people at all levels of the corporation and being confident enough that no matter how old you are, like if you have a seat at the table, you're there for a reason. And so you are empowered and you should feel empowered to be able to make changes, to call things as they are and really just take it into your own hands, right? And not wait for someone who's more senior than you to make a decision. You're there for a reason.
Amazing. And does work-life balance really exist?
It does. It doesn't. And honestly, one of the reasons why I've hit my tenure at Estee Lauder Companies is up until now, who knows what's ahead of me, but up until now, it's a company that really does place a lot of emphasis on work-life balance. Of course, there's days where, I'm putting 13 hours in the office, especially now that I'm living close to the office. It's almost like a, you really have to be the one to draw boundaries for yourself and to draw the line between like the workday and your personal life. And you have to take that into your own hands. But it's certainly possible. And I think the way that you choose what types of companies you stay in and grow in also helps you, right, bring that to life. Like, again, one of the main reasons I've stayed as long as I have is because there's this inherent cultural acceptance and appreciation, and people prioritize work-life balance, right? Like our paternal leave and our maternal leaves are both 6 months long, which many companies don't even offer that, right? Some dads get 4 weeks, if that. So that kind of shows the company's culture and the values, and that's part of why I've stayed.
It's amazing. Yeah, so at the end of the day, it's really about like which company you're working for, right? And definitely differs based on like the industry you're in, the sector, and everything. But I can see you're, dying to ask some questions, so I'll let you get
So
started.
maybe this is like a personal one. So seeing you grow up and when you were in a senior year of college and stuff like that, you were so excited. You were so you are so prepared, you are so worried, whatever be the case, for getting a job. I'm not sure that all graduates, all seniors are like that. Do you think the kids nowadays are less prepared coming into the corporate world, particularly with emphasis on Gen Z?
I do.
Are they different?
Yeah, they
How
are.
are they different?
And I'm not here to, talk negatively upon another generation by any means. I think Gen Z brings a lot to the table that millennials don't, if I'm being honest. And that goes for every single generation up and down. But I think they're a little unprepared, as in, again, I talked about work ethic before. I think the work ethic that millennials carry is very different than Gen Z's, and some of that may be parenting, right? I think parenting has also changed. There's this new emphasis on soft parenting. I see a lot of my friends and colleagues and family members who've had kids, and it's very interesting watching the way they raise kids. And I think you have to find that fine balance, right? I think what it takes for kids to be successful professionally, if you're following the corporate, glide path still, it's harder now, right? Because it's easier for people to be at that same level of success that I was mentioning before, like the cookie cutter resume. So to be able to differentiate yourself, it does take more. And I have found from personal experience that Gen Zs have a little, I don't want to say entitlement, but I do want to say that their focus is elsewhere, right? Where for millennials, it was much more like, I have to do the hard work, I have to get the good grades, and I have to land the internship and land the co-op, and then it's going to get me my foot into the right job. For Gen Zs, I think people are much more, I can make money through YouTube, I can make money through TikTok, and while that's a wonderful thing, while there's so many more ways to monetize your passion at a much earlier age now, I think the flip side to that is people who do want a professional career, you have to try harder. So I hope that answers.
Yeah, it does. And I have a follow-up question, which is connected to this, but I'll also add a few other things to it. One is like between communication skills and technical skills. I mean, I know you need both,
Mhm.
but are the younger people, I do not want to point out Gen Z, younger people, are they emphasizing less on communication skills and more on like technical skill? Like you were saying, okay, I can do TikTok, I can do this, I can do
Mhm.
that, I can earn a lot of money. But maybe, I'm saying only in certain cases, maybe they do not have so much communication skills. So there has to be balance. What are your thoughts on that?
They've learned that they can monetize and make money and a career much earlier in different ways, and that every single person doesn't necessarily need to be strong at communicating, right? So I think as a byproduct of that, not every single person is focusing on that being their primary skill. And so yeah, for sure, like if you look across the playing field, not everyone's going to be as strong of a communicator as probably millennials were, right? Because they were taught that you have to fend for yourself, earn for
Yeah.
yourself, and like be your biggest advocate. So yeah, in that way, I don't think that every single, candidate across the new generation has that
Yeah.
same strong suit, nor are they taught to have that same strong suit because they're like, oh, we can make do with others who have that skill set.
Yeah, one thing to this is also like it's not only about Gen Z, Alina, right?
Totally.
So why I say this is because then it will seem like we're pointing to one particular age group and whatnot. COVID also happened
Hmm.
because of COVID. The work culture changed. I was working during COVID period also, so we were in our pajamas and whatnot and working from home. I, as working after 25 years, find a situation like that I can handle. But someone who's starting their career like that, it's hard for them to
Hmm.
think of a corporate culture where we were used to going almost like suited and booted. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and even now, I mean, Estee Lauder has gone back into the office full time 4 days a week as of about a month ago, right? And so it's talking about the days of like pajamas and like a button down with like boxers on the bottom. Like we've all been through it, right? And we've all had like awkward Zoom interactions where someone is on camera by mistake. But I think that's the beauty of COVID, and that's the memory that we all have, having lived through that time of our lives that was so transformative. And I think now, like even going back into the office one incremental day feels like such a huge shift in your day and your scheduling. People who have parents have to rethink nannies. I mean, there's the impacts are huge. And I think that it's taught people that, I think coming out of COVID, no matter what age you are in, if
Yeah.
you're in corporate America or if you're in high school onwards, it has taught people that you have to be agile, right? And as the workspace and the industry and the macro and micro, economic landscape around us continues to evolve at this like
Yeah.
unprecedented speed, right? That word has become like very nuanced for us, but it really has taught everyone that to survive, and not just survive, but to succeed, you have to be able to be just agile above all else, right? And that could mean going from a day in the office to 4 days in the office.
Yeah.
I mean, the changes are anywhere along the spectrum, but to really succeed in today's world, you have to be able to show that you're willing and capable and able to go from A to Z at any given moment, right? And that's the criteria to success.
And that's when we were all exposed to that very important word called hybrid model.
Right.
And which was for good or worse,
Yeah.
our way of doing things.
RIP.
And some people have stuck to that. Some companies have stuck to that. Some companies, most companies actually, like you were saying, have changed and they're asking people to come in. But if a young person who just started, it's difficult for him to come in. So I'll stop here and I'll let you ask the next set of questions.
Yeah, amazing. So, being a woman in the corporate world, right? Definitely certain like challenges I face as well. Do you think like there's anything that you need to do differently than other people that are in the work sector? Or to basically just show, right, that you also have your capabilities as well.
I'm just gonna say it, like my fake it till you make it. It's affirmations, and you can make it what you do for yourself, but some people do affirmations like a ritual, like every Sunday morning, every Monday morning. It doesn't have to be like you look in the mirror and you talk to yourself, but it comes from a place of trusting and having the confidence in yourself that you being a female does not make you any lesser than any male in the room, right? And that comes with gender, that comes with age, that comes with all of the above, right? So you really have to believe that you being female and there's oftentimes in my career where I've been a 22-year-old in a room full of 40 and 50-year-old white males, and of course at first it's scary, right? At first it's intimidating. At first the imposter syndrome really sinks in, but the more and more you are in those spaces, it just becomes a little bit easier every time. And it becomes easier because you have to convince yourself that you are capable, right? And again, like I said before, if you have a seat at the table, you're there for a reason. So if you don't believe in yourself, nobody around you is going to believe in yourself. And it's all a confidence game at the end of the day. Of course, you have to have the merit, you have to have the skill set. That's what gets you to that next level. But to really thrive, you have to believe in yourself because, again, if you don't, nobody else will.
I think I'm falling in love. Do you have any other
Oh,
questions?
I do. I do. So one thing is how welcoming is corporate America to new graduates, new intakes, new hires? Do you think they are very open to getting new people, or they're demanding too much and not enough coaching
Yeah, I think it's changed a lot. So do you mean today or do you mean when I was
today?
entering? It's different today than when I entered 13, 14 years ago, for sure. I do sense that it's harder now, to be completely honest. It's a lot harder now. I think that, every company is so focused on driving profit and cutting cost. And the easiest way to cut cost is employees and labor, right? Like our compensation. That's the most expensive part of any company. And so I think today, to be a new fresh grad post college, having all the credentials, it's not as easy to get into corporate America as it used to be. Nor do I think they make it as easy as when I was graduating college with my credentials. And I think, again, going back to what I said before, you have to start thinking about these things earlier. You have to start thinking about it in high school and college and beyond just like, what's my next gig? What's my next way to make money? It's more so like, if I want to be on this path, what do I need to start doing today? And what do I have to start thinking about today to get me on that path in 3 years from now, right? And what am I doing that's truly differentiating myself from all of the other candidates who are going to have a resume that looks just like mine? Because ultimately, companies are trying to pay you less and get more out of you, right? I don't think that's a secret. I think I can say that
That's the
with
business
with an
model,
open
right?
chest, right?
Yeah.
That's a business model, right? And I think there's the way that tech is moving, the way that AI is driving, changes in the way that we work every single day. I think there's a new focus on trying to find candidates who are not only have like the baseline credentials, but are also able to operate and learn and be agile, all these words that I've been using, right? In a world of AI, right? And AI is not meant to, I don't want to get into AI immediately off the bat, but like AI is also not meant to replace the workforce anytime soon, right? And I can say that confidently, being at a large company like Estee Lauder Companies. It is meant to supplement the skill set that you bring to the table. And so similar to someone like me who's 13, 14 years into their career, alongside someone who's fresh out of college, it's super important, right? That they come into the career space and to the professional space knowing that they're going to have to not only prove their skill set, but prove how they can marry their skill set with what AI brings to the table to then create, this like new embodiment of work and thinking and workflow and speed and agility. So that's where it's going. And that's what makes it harder, frankly.
Alina and I have plans of doing a show on AI later
Yeah,
on.
absolutely.
Maybe I'll
Yeah.
be back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the point is still that and you already answered that that it has to be, and that's what I like also. That's my thought. Of course, I'm not in the same age group as you guys are. That at least at this stage, there has to be a blend of the two. You cannot just
Totally.
have one or
Right.
not have the others. You cannot say, "Oh, I will not know AI. I don't need to know AI. I have my smartness, this and that." On the other hand, someone cannot say, "Okay, you have to know AI. You don't have
Yeah.
to know anything else." So initially, it has to be like that. Then the world will see how AI does what it does. There are many other ethical and social consequences of that.
Yeah.
But let's not go into that. I just have, I think, one more question for you, which is, say, and this is particularly for immigrant applicants, say, applying from somewhere outside of the US. Do they even have a chance of getting a job here?
They do, but it's a lot harder. They do, but it's a lot harder. And it depends on what space you're in, right? Like I think, medicine's a completely different beast than like corporate business. I think you definitely have a shot, but again, as long as you truly like, and this is not meant to sound cliche, as long as you have that attitude of like grit and tenacity and hard work, like anyone can make it, right? There's no such thing as just because you're an immigrant or you're coming, with most of your undergraduate, maybe you've done your first 18 years or 22 years outside of the States. It's not to say that you can't make it here, aside from like paperwork and those complexities. I think from a merit perspective, there's also so many global opportunities today, right? Like I did to flip this narrative a little bit, when I was in college, my junior year summer, I did an internship at Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, right, where I spent the summer in villages and grams in rural Bangladesh, and worked with the poorest of the poor women, helping figure out how we can use microcredit to help them fund their own small businesses, right? And this was years ago. And Professor Yunus was like way ahead of his time with this kind of thinking, even. But so I'm bringing that up because it's really not about where you're from. It's about we're in such a global space today that if on your vision board is to come to the States and you're living abroad, there's a very distinct way that you can get there, and you can start planting the seed. You can connect with people on LinkedIn. Networking is the key, right? And it's so easy in today's world to meet with people who are across the world. You can cold turkey email people, message people, call people, and maybe like 99% of the time you won't get a response, but that 1% of the time that you do, so many people land their gigs through that one email, through that one call, right? So yes, there absolutely is a way, and I think it goes both ways. I think kids who grew up here often lean on that immigrant background to boost their resume to the American workforce. And so if you can do that, then why doesn't it go the other way, right? There's no reason for it not to.
So in other words, what I understand, that it has to be a skill match rather than where you're coming from, what you
Yes.
do and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And
Skill match and people,
very-
right? And networking.
very broadly
Totally.
stating.
Yeah.
So I have one last question. This is once you are on board, right? It's a very standard question. And since you have been there for a while and you have been hiring people and people have been promoted in your group and other groups, what do you think are the main thing that you look at, a candidate who is quote unquote promotable and someone not so much, or why it takes someone too long?
Yeah. I think it's someone who doesn't ask to be promoted. I think, one of my old bosses told me once, not even bosses, like it was my boss's boss's boss, like a couple tiers above me. But she said, you've been doing, as I was getting, it was actually Memorial Day weekend a couple years ago, so anniversary of this weekend. And she had pulled me into her office and she said, and I knew what the good news was, right? Because the writing was kind of on the wall leading up to that meeting. But she had said, Leilani, you have been doing this job for the past year and a half without asking for the title. And so that's my way of paying it forward. And that's the advice that I give to everybody else. Like, just do the hard work, right? Put your head down, do the hard work. If you want to be a director or a manager or an executive director or move into this group it's not even about titles, right? It's about where you want to be. For me, it was never about titles. For me, it was about, like I said, my parents taught me to work hard. And so I just worked hard. And so that was seen and perceived by others, even way above me, as this girl is already doing the job and she hasn't asked for it. So like, of course, we're going to give her the promotion as soon as like financially we can afford it, right? It's all about the P&L and comp and all of that. There's so many good people who sit around and don't get promoted, but you can either sit there and complain and let that, affect your work and output, or you can leave, right? No one's holding you hostage. You can also leave. But if you're going to be there, do your best to just like show up to work every day with the best attitude, be a good employee, be a good friend, be a good colleague to those around you, because that energy will take you to your next level without asking for it. So that's my advice.
Just to add, next level here and also wherever you want to go.
Totally.
Because you have to be marketable at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You may not be in the same company for ever and ever.
Yeah. And then that's why I think the focus should be, like, to close up on that question, to build your brand. Like, you should not see yourself as your brand, right?
Yeah.
Like the Leilani brand,
Individual.
right? You're like on this
Right.
island of just you. And you're really not, you shouldn't see yourself as an attachment to the parent company that you work for. That's a vessel, right? That's a vessel to help you get to wherever you want to go to next, to help you build the skills that you want to build, to help you meet the people that you want to meet. But it's about you, it's about your personal brand. And that's something that nobody can take away from you. So if that's how you're always, waking up every day and leading your day with the vision of, I'm going to keep building my self brand, that speaks for itself.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I feel like people are really buying into you, and you are the product, right? They're basically investing into you.
It's in yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And that, kind of brings me into my next question. Like, what is the unwritten rule of the corporate world?
Oh, it's a good one. The unwritten rule of corporate America, that was the question, right? I think it's to make people uncomfortable. And listen, when I say that, I don't mean like be politically incorrect or curse or act unprofessionally. I think I'm assuming that everyone knows those are like the baseline. But if you kind of ruffle a couple feathers along the way in a professional way, one thing that my past managers have said to me during my year-end reviews is, Leilani, you have such a unique way of delivering bad news in a humorous way, right? And I'm sitting in rooms with VPs like laughing and trying to make jokes and trying to lighten the situation. And I did that before because I think I grew up with like humor being a really important part of my core identity. And like, I grew up in a family where humor is, very important. And, my parents were always making jokes growing up. And so I grew up in that environment. So I tried to create that environment at my, in my professional spaces without realizing that people actually really appreciated it, to the point where, again, it became a part of my like Leilani personality at work without even trying. And so I say that because there's more than one way to ruffle feathers, to ask uncomfortable questions, to put the elephant on the table, right? And again, like not at the expense of risking your career. Of course, you do it in a way that's presentable and professional, but people remember those people, right? If you're just the average Joe or the average Karen who's, doing everything by the books and following the rules and meeting all the deadlines, like, sure, maybe you'll get promoted at some point, right? But you're not really leaving a mark. Whereas people who have the audacity, right, and I say that word in a very positive context, people who have that audacity, especially at younger ages in rooms with people who are much senior to them, which often I was that girl, people remember, they're like, oh, who is that girl? Who's that? And then there's a follow-up email to your boss and like whatever. And that's how people talk and that's how people remember who you are. So never be shy, be confident. If you know your facts and you've done your homework, you have every right to own whatever question you're about to ask, right? And just because someone else hasn't asked it doesn't mean they're not thinking it. So a lot of times it also gives you kudos to be like, oh, wow, she actually asked the question that probably every single person is thinking, but is too afraid to ask.
Lani, just one point. I think the line is very fine sometimes.
Agree. And I think it's like high risk, high reward, right? You can choose to take the path of, least amount of risk your whole career. I've never done that, honestly. I haven't. And maybe that's part of what brought me here. Maybe I got lucky, right? I'll never really know what the full story is. Maybe God's on my side, maybe all of the above. I don't know. But I personally am not cookie cutter, so I don't believe in like staying in my lane and doing I do as I'm told, but I try to take that to the next level, right? I try to challenge people. I try to push the envelope a little bit every single time. And I agree with you, Bobby. You're absolutely right. Like the line is very fine, right? And so it's a very delicate dance that you need to be confident enough to do. But if that's something that you're willing to do, I think it could take you really far in your career and you can soar.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that does bring us to the end of the show today. Thank you so much for your time. There's a lot that we both learned. And
just to say, I had 35 other questions.
Oh, amazing. Well, we can ask the next time. I feel like we've been drowning with a lot of questions.
No,
so
this is fun.
I do appreciate it. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching. And I hope you all learned something today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.